submission, then Karen's on hand to answer those questions for you. So with that, I'll just highlight some all of the key matters that have been addressed in the submission, starting with the context around Ngāti Rāhiri Tumutumu. They are based in Te Aroha, with ties to that area, the waterways, catchment inland. And the full context is actually outlined in the settlement legislation, so I won't go into that deeply. I'm sure you've all taken a look at the bill. This bill implements the deed of settlement that Ngāti Rāhiri signed. Whilst we, council, are not a party to the settlement and the negotiations, we will be directly affected by some of the clauses within the bill. Specifically, land vesting and statutory acknowledgement. So I'll start with the land vesting topic. There are two, Kahumaro whenua and Te Ruinga whenua, that will be vested in Ngāti Tumutumu as fee simple land. The council will retain full statutory functions under the Soil Conservation and Rivers Control Act. So that means that we'll continue to carry out erosion control, soil conservation as usual. Because these parcels of land aren't classified as reserve land, as some of the other parcels that would be transferred are, the Act provisions within the bill will not apply. So just an important distinction to make. So there are some administering obligations if land is deemed to be reserve land, which these are not. So the council submission is seeking reassurance that the access, operation and maintenance of flood assets and our assets in relation to those two parcels of land are protected now and into the future. And that if the reserve status does change at any point in the future, no, sorry, that's for the next bit. So what I will do is just pause there to make sure that the submission point in relation to those two parcels of land are understood and supported in the submission.
Any comment?
The third parcel of land is a little bit trickier.
Actually, sorry to interrupt. Can I go back just into the submission point? So number submission point 2 on page 16 of the agenda, because it's around those two. I was suggesting is, where it says the council supports the vesting of these parcels into Ngāti Rāhiri Tumutumu, would it be better for us to say that we're neutral in the vesting of that? So rather than us being involved in, to me, that's an item for the government and as part of it. So we're neutral whether it happens or not. Maybe it would be a better description in that space. That's all I was thinking.
Sure.
Because we're well,
acknowledges.
for us, we're neutral on that part of the vesting into, because that's a treaty settlement issue. It's not something that's in front of us as part of our submission into it. But
so is it with regard to point 4? Sorry, can you read to the
no, so around point 2, submission points in that vesting, and it just says council supports. So halfway down, council supports the vesting of these excuse me, of these parcels, et cetera. So I mean, we're not supporting it, but I just thought we're neutral in the supporting.
What we could replace that word with as a suggestion is council acknowledges the vesting.
Yeah. Thank you.
And that is more aligned with our intention to.
Yes, perfect. Thanks, Marley. Yeah.
So moving on to the Oahu Whenua parcel of land. This one is a little bit trickier because it's land that is administered by Matamata Piako District Council. And it will be deemed a recreation reserve under the bill, which does bring about a number of additional obligations related to recreation of it. We believe that through the negotiation process, there was no awareness that council has flood protection assets on that land, and so it's been completely missed. So our submission is bringing that awareness to the Māori community and asking for some acknowledgement of council's assets and protection of our ongoing access, maintenance, operation of those flood assets. It's really important to also note that those assets provide critical flood protection to the surrounding area, and there are residential areas directly adjacent to the reserve. So this is probably the most critical part of our submission, asking for the Crown to make sure that our ongoing operation of that flood protection asset is maintained now and going into the future. I'll pause there.
I had a couple of suggestions there. I noticed that a section 31 to 37 is actually different. So item 13 on page 7. So the first two were listed as properties vested under fee simple, and the section 31 is property vested under fee simple to be administered as a reserve. So there's a difference between the two blocks. I wondered when we get to the map whether we should actually clarify that, because we just simply mention it as section 31, but it's actually administered as a reserve. So that's page 13.
With regard to the maps, we weren't intending to include them with the submission, but we can certainly do that because it will help to clearly identify the parcels of land that we are referring to in our submission, and take the point that referring to that section 31 is probably not the well, it isn't.
Well, it's clarified, but it's easy to forget, where somebody can clearly look at that and see it's administered as a reserve. And the second point was on page 16, number 6. Often when we make submissions, we give them some wording. This doesn't actually, it asks them to acknowledge the vesting will not affect us, but would it be helpful to give them some wording that they could put in the document? Sure. I don't know, was that a useful suggestion or not?
It will make, I guess, it clearer what we are asking to change within the bill. So we can certainly draft up the appropriate words that we think could slot into that bill to make it clear that flood asset assets are protected. So we'll go ahead and do that.
Yeah, we'll talk tomorrow to sign off. Anyone else?
No, thanks, Ben. I think that's any examples and things like that are always helpful in a submission, whether it's an example or whether it's suggested wording.
And the other one is item 20, that there's an easement and an unregistered license to occupy granted to page 8, item 20. That person being contacted, do they know what's going on? It's just interesting, it's unlicensed, unregistered license.
Certainly hasn't been contacted by Waikato Regional Council, but they would have had direct negotiations with the Crown through the bill, I would assume. And like the Regional Council, have the opportunity to hit on the bill. just having a look at the fact that they are included in the bill, acknowledged, and that their future rights under the bill will be protected, I'd imagine that they'd be pretty happy that they're.
So they're not a licensed to occupy from us, they're from in our country. Okay, that's not our issue.
Not our issue.
Yeah. Moving on.
So just on that point, we looked for the updates needed. And that's on your good feedback. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah, we can just clarify. So the three matters will be the changing the supports to the acknowledge the vesting, including the additional statutory reference to the legislation under the map, and then the suggested wording around the provisions that we'd like to see in the bill.
Yeah.
So those are the three amendments. That
I've got one more. Anyone else got anything to say? So at the conclusion, page 10, we say that our submission is limited to those matters that directly affect council's statutory role. Notice on page 17, integration with national resource management support. Council seeks assurance that the obligations, statutory acknowledgements and engagement expectations arising from this and other treaty settlements will continue to have legal effect. I would just suggest we remove "and other," because we're specifically talking about this treaty settlement and we don't generally get to talk about wider ones.
We can do that. Making the submission specific to this bill as opposed to treaty settlements.
General. And it's just removing the words "and other." Yeah.
Well, given that we've jumped ahead to that, I assume that the rest of the submission points been read, understood, and I'll leave it there.
Tracy was ready to close the meeting with your three, so I needed to get that one in. So.
just wanting to make sure that's just what we usually do and capture each of them. So
Yes,
if
absolutely.
Then goes, oh, you forgot this, or you
Right.
didn't remember this. So
It's arrived. He's wondering where we are.
we'll get those changes made. We'll circulate to you, Mr. Chair, and then we'll get the submission signed and lodged by tomorrow.
By tomorrow or tomorrow? Yeah, because we're in tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Happy to move.
Well, you want Chris to arrive and
I want him to be noted.
Yes, they can.
there you go.
Contribute.
All right. So we put the motion, please. All those in favour?
Right.
Opposed? Carried.
Hear us to finish our meeting.
Yes, indeed.
Unuhia mai te uri tapanui ki wāhuru, ki māma, te ngākau, te tinana, te hingi ngaro i te ara takatu. Ko i rā i rongo i whakairea ake ki runga ki a tīna. Haunea hui e.
No, gentle.
Thanks, Ashley.
Gentle.
Way to ease into it.
Ease it.
Right.